This is Myra Elaine on the Buying Space channel, and today I'm reading the Torah. I read to chapter 14 in Exodus, verse 8, but I am going to recap because of the way this divided up. And I should start with Joseph. Joseph was the son that was favored by his father. The other sons were jealous and sold him into slavery into Egypt. He rose to power there. He had dreams. He had dreams since he was a young man. He was blessed of God. And he rose to power because he interpreted dreams. And he interpreted the dream of Pharaoh that there was going to be a famine in the land. And there was. And they followed Joseph's instructions, and Egypt and the entire area was saved from the famine. Well, his brothers came to get grain, so he reconnected with his family. And they moved to Goshen, which is in Egypt. And they prospered there. But when the Pharaoh died, after Joseph died, that knew Joseph, the next Pharaoh had no loyalty to Joseph's people. So slowly they became enslaved. And they were enslaved for, I believe, 430 years. And then Moses was born at a time that the Pharaoh that was in power was genociding the Jews slowly. And he was ordering that the male babies be thrown into the Nile when they were born. And Moses was a male baby, and his mother built a reed basket and put it in the Nile. And Pharaoh's sister picked baby Moses up out of the water, or had one of her maidens bring the basket to her, and Moses was in the basket, and she fell in love with Moses, the little boy crying. And Miriam, Moses' sister, had been watching in the distance, and she came up to Pharaoh's sister and said, I know somebody that can nurse that baby for you. And Moses was nursed by his own mother. But then, after he was weaned, he was returned to the household of Pharaoh. He was raised there as a son. Then, when he became more of an age, when he became a man, he found out that he was Hebrew and that his people were the slaves. And he saw an Egyptian beating one of the slaves, and he killed them. So he had to leave because he had murdered an Egyptian. It was to save someone else's life. In modern times, if I saw someone killing someone else or beating someone else, I could use force to stop that. But Moses knew that the Egyptians would not look at the beating of a slave as a reason to kill an Egyptian man. So he left. He found a wife by helping her well, and married into that family of Moabites and had a family. And then God called him through the burning bush. So he returned to free his people. And he came back, and with his brother Aaron faced Pharaoh. And there were 10 plagues that plagued Egypt. And the last plague was the first Passover, where all the firstborn in Egypt of people and of cattle, were the firstborn males, all died if they didn't have the blood of the lamb on their doorposts. And Pharaoh lost his son. So finally, he relented and let the people go with all that they owned. And the Egyptians were happy to see them go because they'd all lost their oldest sons and more cattle. And they were like, please go. So they gave them gold and silver. But they also had to leave in a hurry because everyone wanted them gone. So they get out to the wilderness. And that's kind of where we are here. Okay, this is the first Passover instructions. They did not go to the land of the Philistines. And where did they go? They went into the wilderness to the Red Sea. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with them because they were leaving. And they didn't want anything of them left in Egypt that they had to go back for. So they took Joseph's bones with them. And there was a pillar cloud that they followed. And God told Moses exactly where to camp. Migdal and the sea, between Migdal and the sea, in front of Baal Zephron. And that's where they were to encamp. So God had a plan. Because lo and behold, in chapter 14, verse 8, Pharaoh, even after he let the people go, and they were in the wilderness, and they were gone, and all their possessions were gone, even the bones of Joseph were with them. This is what Pharaoh did again. Verse 8, and the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with a high hand, and the Egyptians pursued after them, and they overtook them encamping by the sea. All the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, beside Pi Haroth, before Baal Zebulun. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they were greatly afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. And they said unto Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that thou hast taken us away to die in the wilderness? What is this which thou hast done to us to bring us forth out of Egypt? Is it not the word that we spoke unto thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians, for he is better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness? And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see salvation of the Lord, which he will do for you today. For as ye have seen the Egyptians today, ye shall not see them again any more forever. The Lord will fight for you and shall hold and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. And thou lift up thy staff, and stretch it out thy hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea on dry ground. And I, behold, I will harden the heart of the Egyptians, that they shall follow them, and I will get myself honor on Pharaoh and on all his hosts, on his chariots and on his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have got myself honor on Pharaoh, on his chariots and on his horsemen. And the angel of God that went before the camp of Israel removed and went behind them, and the other pillar of the cloud removed from before them and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud of darkness, and gave light by night. And one came not near unto the other all night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove back the sea with a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them, and their right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, his horsemen, and the midst of them of the sea. And it came to pass in the morning watch that the Lord looked into the camp of the Egyptians with the pillar of fire and of cloud, and brought unto confusion to the camp of the Egyptians. And he took off the wheels of their chariots and caused them to move with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thy hand over the sea, and the water shall return over the Egyptians, over their chariots, and over their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned, when the morning appeared unto its strength, and the Egyptians were fleeing against it. The Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh that came after him into the sea. There remained of them not even one. But the children of Israel walked upon dry ground in the midst of the sea, and the waters were unto them a wall of their right hand and on their left. Thus God saved Israel that day out of the land of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the shore of the sea. And Israel saw that great power which the Lord hath shown unto the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord, and then believed in the Lord and in Moses his servant. This is one of the most debated sections of the Torah. People don't have faith to believe it. And I guess that's human nature, because here are these people of Israel. They're in this horrible position where they have the Egyptian army coming after them, and they have the sea on the other side, and they know they're trapped. But they still don't have faith. They saw the Egyptians suffer through the 10 plagues. They saw themselves spared from these plagues while it was happening all around them. to the Egyptians. They saw the Egyptians' cattle die. And in the last plague, they saw the Egyptians lose all of their eldest born males, sons, and all of their animals. And they were spared from that. So here they are in the wilderness, trapped. They've been led by God through a cloud of darkness and a cloud of fire. By day and by night, by this metaphysical cloud of God. Don't they know by now that God is going to take care of them? But here they are with the same old questions to Moses, the same old questions they had of him when he first returned from the land of Moabites, being called of God through a burning bush. They questioned him. And even though Moses and Aaron had appeared before Pharaoh and done signs and wonders, and announced the 10 plagues, and God had the 10 plagues happen, they still didn't have the faith to know that God would rescue them from this situation. What more would you need? People talk about doubting Thomas. He spent his whole life around Jesus, or at least his adult life. And he had seen Jesus perform miracles. But yet, after he was resurrected, he couldn't believe that it was Jesus until he saw the wounds in his hands and on his feet. Yes, it does take a leap of faith to believe that this happened, that this is real. Now, I've seen documentaries about it where this particular location, the water was low and this and that, and making it seem not as miraculous as it was. That the Egyptians went out when there was high tide and they just got stuck in the mud. These verses clearly say that there was a wall of water that made a tunnel on dry land that the Israelis walked through. It clearly says that. Find the exact verse. But the children of Israel walked upon dry ground in the midst of the sea, and the waters unto them a wall on their right hand and a wall on their left. So this wasn't a matter of the tide coming in and out. This Bible states this miracle as miraculous as it was. And if we go in, you know how Jesus said, be hot or cold. If you're lukewarm, I will spit you out. If we try to appease people that have no faith, and we change the narrative, we are changing how miraculous this event was. So I know it's hard. People will say this and Noah's Ark, they laugh about. They bring up all this stuff. They make jokes about what animals were and weren't on the ark. But this happened. You have to have faith. This happened. Even the story about Paul being in the jail in the earthquake. I have sat in a church where they said that that didn't really happen, that it was all a metaphor. This book, the Torah, and the New Testament, the Old Testament, New Testament, they are not metaphorical. Song of Solomon's is metaphorical. But the rest of this book, the parting of the Red Sea, a Reed Sea, happened as it's described in these words. And if you call yourself a Christian and you don't believe that, are you really Christian? It is time, people, to shore up your faith and truly believe in God. But that's my opinion. Oh, and the opinion of the Torah. You all have a wonderful and blessed day.